Now, we've been building up to this interview, the Home Affairs Department planning a future where you won't have to visit their offices in person, at least, as it plans to go digital soon. The department is introducing new visa changes to reduce corruption and create more jobs. Now, these changes will also make the application process easier and more transparent. President Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, also releasing a statement recently welcoming the reforms in visa regimes in the country, saying, of course, this will go a long way in attracting investments. Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber is our guest, and he joins us now via our video link. Minister, thanks for your time, and we appreciate your patience. Welcome to the SABC News Channel. This has certainly been seen as good news on the whole. I just made reference to the president's statement, which I first spotted early this morning. And essentially, the thinking here is that these reforms will allow South Africa to be a world-class destination for investment. For people who are struggling to connect the dots for us, how does that happen, plainly speaking?
Yes, well, I believe that this is the most meaningful and progressive pro-jobs and market-based reform that South Africa has seen in a matter of decades. And the reason I say that is on a number of fronts. The first one is because these regulatory changes now bring into life the remote work visa, which is actually not a work visa at all. It is a tourism visa, because it allows someone who is employed in another country, where that country carries all of the costs of employing that person, to come and essentially spend their money in South Africa. And I believe we have created the most attractive remote work visa in the world to make sure that we can bring as many of these people to South Africa as possible. The injection of cash that this will mean for our economy is really without precedent. We've set the threshold at about 650,000 Rand a year, which means that, of course, we want these people to have enough money to take care of themselves and not be a burden on South Africa when they come here. So that's why we need a threshold. But even if you use just that number, which is quite low by international standards, and you multiply that by even a few thousand people using the remote work visa, we are talking of billions of rands injected into the South African economy, being spent at South African restaurants, on South African products created by South African producers, as well as contributing value-added tax into the South African fiscus. So that's the one part of the reform that will generate massive new job opportunities in South Africa over time. The second one is the creation of the points-based system for work visas. Now, what this one does is it addresses the skills shortage that we have in our economy. The reality is that in South Africa, only about 6% of the skills that we require at the highest end in tertiary form are available. And so we know that skills is one of the biggest impediments to growth in South Africa. The National Treasury said to us that after load shedding, the shortage of critical skills at the higher end of the labor market is the second biggest growth impediment. Now, what the points-based system does is it creates a transparent system for allocating for adjudicating work visa applications, including critical skills visa applications. This will combat corruption, because there will be a very clear scale, a table that's being used to allocate who gets the required 100 points. And you can get that 100 points on the basis of having a critical skill. You can get it on the basis of being highly educated, on the basis of being highly experienced, on the basis of having a high job offer. Again, above 650,000 Rand a year will give you bonus points on the system, as well as being recruited by what we call the Trusted Employer Scheme, which exists within the Department of Home Affairs. And what the research tells us, this is research commissioned independently by the Reserve Bank and the International Food Policy Institute, is that if we increase the share of skills in the economy by only 0.02% of the population, as a share of the population, we can create 1.2% annual GDP growth and 7 new jobs for every additional skill attracted into the South African economy. So that's why these two reforms are really revolutionary for job creation.
Yeah, and one has to wonder why it's taken so long to get us here. I imagine that's a question a lot of people are asking without, I suppose, putting you on a pedestal. But I mean, for example, we're going to be wondering, for example, if other issues that have been protracted in the country can be resolved, given the progress that you've been able to make in Home Affairs in what, the first 100 days?
Well, I've actually said from day one that Home Affairs is a very important portfolio precisely because people think you can't make progress. And what I've been saying to our team internally, who I also want to thank very much for the incredible hard work that they've put in over the last few weeks on these regulations, is that if we can show that Home Affairs can improve, that it can work, then we will actually restore the belief that South Africa itself can work. And I think if you look at these reforms that we've put in place now, and I want to say there's more where this came from, we want to make sure that we fulfill the GNU's apex priority, which is to grow the economy and create jobs. So we are looking at other mechanisms to turn South Africa into a world-class destination for tourism and for investment. But if we can demonstrate that this can happen, then so can things be fixed in South Africa. Some of the examples of what we're busy working on, and actually right after this interview, I'm going to join a meeting with stakeholders that want to make use of our new trusted tour operator scheme. This is a very innovative program that will enable us to bring large tourism groups from China and India through vetted and secured tour operators, because that too is a massive potential way for us to create jobs in the tourism sector in South Africa. And then, of course, Home Affairs, I can now report to you within a space of 5 months, we have reduced our backlog in the visa and permitting section that started out at over 306,000 by 67%. We are doing really well on this front. And of course, we've cleared the backlog of IDs that had been stuck after there was a changeover in the IT system. So indeed, we still have a huge amount of work to do. This is only the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important for South Africans to see that their government is working for them. And if we focus and if we want to create jobs and do the things that attract investment and tourism to South Africa, we can do those things.
It's great to hear that the system appears to be improving, but I wonder how happy you are about the kind of interface experience people have with Home Affairs officials inside the offices. And we'll speak about the objective to try get to a point where people don't have to go to the offices, but for now they do. And last time I checked, the lines can still get very long. In some instances, it feels like there can still be corruption between officials and some people who want to skip those lines. And ultimately, it becomes a dreaded experience for people who want to go there.
Yes, I'm obviously not happy with the way that the model is currently working. And as you say, right now it still requires people to physically go to Home Affairs offices, even for routine transactions. And so indeed, as you mentioned, it has only been 100 days. And even as we move as fast as we can, unfortunately, there is no magic wand to really wave and fix that problem overnight. Having said that, what we want to do as an interim measure while we build the Home Affairs at Home digital system is to make sure that Home Affairs expands our footprint without spending more money on bricks and mortar. So that's why we're going to be looking at our existing partnerships with the banks. We want to make sure that we ramp up our presence massively, because if Home Affairs can be more accessible, if it can be closer to your home, at least in your community, then the queues will be reduced because people don't all flock to the same offices. So that is something we're working on as we speak as an important interim measure. But of course, as you say, where we want to end up is to rebuild the technological platform that the department uses so that you're able to sit at home and apply for a new ID, for a new passport, using a platform very similar to the online banking system that we have, which has built-in biometric and facial recognition to know that it is actually you who's applying. And then we want to make it possible to deliver what you need physically to your doorstep, and also create digital versions of your documents so that you always have them with you when you have your phone. So that's, of course, a longer-term project. But everything we're busy doing in the interim is taking us closer towards that goal. So at Home Affairs, we know this is a long journey to walk, but we are most definitely taking one step forward every day.
Yeah, I'm yet to come across anybody who hasn't welcomed these changes. So I suppose you're doing something right in the department, Dr. Schreiber. It'd be remiss of me not to ask you of something unrelated in a sense, but still, I suppose, worth ventilating. Calls for Home Affairs to revoke the visa, which may or may have not been granted to Chris Brown because of claims against him in his past when he was convicted of abuse. Has this reached your attention, your office? Do you have a response to any of those petitions?
I've not received anything on that front officially, but I suppose what I can say is what I've been saying from day one in the department is that we will be guided by the law when we take decisions in Home Affairs. I think there are far too many cases where Home Affairs has ended up in court. I'm sure you've dealt with many of those issues on your program here. And so we cannot be guided by anything other than what the law tells us. And so that's the metric we apply to any and all such cases. I guess in this case as well, the question can also be directed at organizers, because certainly Home Affairs wasn't, we don't necessarily play the function of inviting people to South Africa. We process one part of it, which is, of course, whether they meet the South African law's threshold in terms of entry and exit procedures. And so I do want to say that for all such cases, we certainly don't want to weaponize executive power to punish people outside of the law. We will strictly enforce the law, as you've seen with some of the incidents that have happened even in the past few months, but we will always do so on the basis of what the Constitution and the law requires of us and nothing else.
All right. Leon Schreiber, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Leon Schreiber, of course, is the Home Affairs Minister. All right, we'll keep watching all of those stories for you as they continue to unfold.